Hello, I'm Fred Evans. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The 2019 legislative session in Annapolis has ended, but the drama there has not ended with the election of a new Speaker of the House of Delegates this week. Linna Barnes, associate producer of Montgomery Week in Review, has the story. When times are hard, government workers may forego raises in salary that they have expected. However, it may be difficult for officials to bring salaries up to those expectations, even when the economy improves. Jane DeWinter, who comments for this show, will give us her thoughts. The initiative of the Young Child was announced with great fanfare early in this spring by the Executive and the County Council. Chuck Short of the Executive's office will tell us what has happened since. Good to see all of you. Linna? What happened?
Well, I think many people know that Michael Bush, who's been the Speaker of the House in Annapolis for the General Assembly, the House of Delegates, he died the day before the session ended.
Yes.
He died on April 7th. The session ended on April the 8th. So clearly they were going to have to elect a new Speaker. And there had been people that had been waiting in the wings for a while. Maggie McIntosh of Baltimore City is head of the Appropriations Committee. She really thought she wanted to have this position. Then you also had Derek Davis, who is from Prince George's County.
Prince George's, right.
And he really wanted it. And then it turned out Adrienne Jones from Baltimore County
right.
has been Speaker pro tem for 16 years, and she thought, oh, maybe I'll do it.
And that pro tem job is what?
It's like the second.
Second in command.
So
okay.
She has actually been running the House for the last 4 weeks of the session.
Interesting.
Because Speaker Bush was so ill at the end,
right.
He could not come in. So it looked like it was me a fight, and it was going to be both Delegates Davis and Jones are black. Adrienne is a woman, Derek is a man, obviously, and then Maggie McIntosh is a woman, and she's also openly gay. So this was going to be a real change. It'll be the first time any of these other categories, that a white man in the whole time of there's been a General Assembly. So something new was going to happen, and Adrienne Jones dropped out fairly quickly, and it became between McIntosh and Davis.
Interesting.
And the Black Caucus rallied around Davis, and mostly the young, more liberal delegates rallied around McIntosh. And McIntosh had the votes in the Democratic caucus to win, but Davis got the agreement of the Republican caucus that they would all vote for him. He didn't have enough Democrats, but since it goes to the full House, he would have won the speakership in the full House. So yesterday, Wednesday, they went into caucus, and rather than electing McIntosh and coming out as where the majority was, they stayed for 5 hours trying to come up with a solution that wouldn't involve Republicans. And eventually Adrienne Jones, who had been a possibility at the beginning, she's Speaker pro tem, she said she would agree to do it, and so she was elected. So it'll be the first black and the first woman in the history of the House.
So it sounds a little bit like picking a pope, but...
Yes, just a bit.
White smoke or black smoke.
Right.
Okay,
But,
let's keep religion out of it, please.
But it just is kind of interesting because I'm thinking about, comparison to our federal government, where the party with the majority picks a speaker and does not need the support.
Well, no. If the same thing could happen, but they've just stayed tighter around one person. But the whole House of Representatives votes for the Speaker.
All right, I did not know that.
So it was exactly like this, but they've never been, say, two
Internal.
Republicans or
Right.
two Democrats, and
They
then one
come
of
out
them,
united.
They
Yeah.
come out united around
Yeah.
one candidate.
I think it reflects the fracture in the Democratic Party here in our state, where we have a very active, more centralist, traditional group, and then an up-and-coming progressive group. And it sounds like they clashed. And I'm grateful and pleased and proud that in Maryland it sounds like we compromised and came up with
I
a
think
solution.
you're absolutely right. I mean, it was really the young, more liberal versus a more conservative, and the Black Caucus. And there was a real headbutting, but as opposed to just meeting deadlock and not doing anything, they came up with a compromise, which really seems like a really good one in terms of
And
the
she
person
has
they
the
chose.
she has the experience, obviously, in the House and is respected by members of both sides. Is that correct?
I think
From
that's
what I've
right.
read.
I think obviously she is both black and a woman, and one of the things that's interesting, it's still not anybody from Montgomery County. We haven't had someone in a high position in the General Assembly, the top position in either the House or the Senate for a long time. I think Blair Lee Jr., who was back in the 50s, was the last Speaker of the House.
Mike Miller and Mike Bush have been in those positions for over 30 years.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly,
That's what I
both
was
of
going to
them.
ask is that, do you think that, and this might be something that generalizes, that there might be more sort of infighting within the party, been out of power, partly because it's been white males for such a lock for so long. There's so many other groups that are all wanting to have representation, so that,
I think
if
that-
it had been kind of like, okay, there was a woman 10 years ago and there was somebody of color before that, or,
I think you're probably right. I think the fact that it, like I said, 4 centuries of white males as speakers, and for that matter, white males as the president of the Senate. So,
Well, on that note, we have to move on to the next story. Thank you very much. We will see how things develop in the next session.
exactly.
The
It'll
next
be interesting
90
to
days.
see change.
Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
Tell us about.
Well, the most recent thing was that the council is now it's May, so they are really digging into the budget because they usually pass it by the end of May.
How big is the budget, just for the, what's the total?
Is it 4.8?
About very close to $6 billion.
$6
billion
billion? Okay,
dollars.
so I'm a
Yes.
billion off. Yeah, a billion plus off. But what's
What's a
what's
billion?
that? Yeah, what's a billion?
Sorry,
Yeah. So
Didn't mean to sidetrack.
it's quite large, and but so the council had took a straw vote on the raises, or that the county executive had negotiated with the county government employees union,
And that's McGeo, right?
McGeo, right?
That number.
And that's pretty much people who are working in just the general, not the school teachers, not the firefighter, but
the
bus
government.
drivers, government. Yes,
Not
and
bus drivers, actually.
right on.
Right on.
Right
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was thinking
Right.
school bus drivers.
Not
No,
police-
no,
not
not
police
school
and
bus.
fire.
No. And not everybody would get this amount, but potentially it was a raise at 9.4%, which is a lot, which is substantially more than the firefighters had negotiated, substantially more than the police, and more than the schools. And so the council sent that back. And basically, it took a straw vote that there was not support for that level of raise.
Of raise, wow.
And so it's gone back to, okay, try again. And I think it's interesting because it brings up kind of a couple of questions. One of them is that, okay, if, as the lead was saying, is that when a recession is and you give no raises or you give much smaller raises, does that sort of incur a commitment to make up for it when times are good? I don't know whether everybody in the private sector has that,
Yeah.
And then there's also the question of, I think it also plays out, there's illustrating some of the animosity between the county council and the county executive.
A former colleague, right?
Right, a former colleague.
Well, some of them, yeah.
Right, for some of them, yeah.
I think the other important feature of that negotiation was the current County Executive Elrich's work with the unions to get them to agree to work with him on two important issues. One was to reduce the size of the workforce through attrition, not by layoffs. By reducing the number of employees, you can afford to compensate those that remain a little bit better. And also, I think he negotiated during the election primarily the union support to help him with some of the restructuring of government, which is always contentious with the labor union when you start changing people's jobs. So I think that those elements were part of that higher raise, as well as the misstep and things like that.
Right, exactly. But I think that what, council members, have been putting out on their, they want to cover their own
Constituency.
Yes, constituencies or whatever, and so they're putting out and they're explaining it. Partly is that okay? Well, we know that County Executive Elrich had made this agreement for higher compensation, and that was in return though for fewer positions. And they're pointing out that his budget proposal includes an increase of 90 positions in the county government. So it's kind of like, okay, you didn't.
Where do you think this is all going to go, so to speak? What do you think the next steps here?
I think that it's likely that they're probably going to. I mean, the raise, when you get to 9.4%, it's a 2.4% raise across the board, 3.5% for their regular steps, which is like you move up as you've been in government. And then there was 3.5% for the misstep. And so I'd expect to see some movement on the misstep portion of it.
It's interesting how you do have the council reporting back to their constituencies about how, we're concerned about this, but they just came out with total support for education. The council and the executive said, oh yes, we're going to fully fund the school budget. So they're obviously they're not always butting heads. They're
Right, but one of the things that they did point to is that overall the school system's budget has only a 4.6% raise. So it's, they can still make some sort of political capital out of that. Right, exactly.
There is to answer your question, Fred, there is an end to this because the council must act on the budget by a date. And the labor contract, I think, has to be renegotiated now, I think, within a matter of days. I think they have maybe 8 more days in which to get this resolved. So it's not like something they could put off.
We have just a few seconds left. Any other final thoughts?
Well, just basically that, Montgomery County, the economy is generally considered to be okay, at least nationally. And yet Montgomery County is still trying to cobble together bits and pieces to make a budget work. And, there is a point that if it's tough when times are okay.
Okay. Well, on that note, we have to take a break and we'll be right back. And we're back. Chuck, welcome.
Thank you. It's always good to be here, Fred.
Good to see you, and thank you for all the work you've done for county government.
Thank you.
Tell us about young mind. No, tell me. There we go.
Pre-K and child care, to use the simple language.
Right.
There's a lot of excitement and interest in the county, not only with County Executive Elrich, but also the County Council and the Board of Education around early care for children. And that is primarily two things, one pre-K, and the other is child care. And I think that renewed interest, we've always had an interest in that, but so it's been rather intensely renewed in the last couple of years. It's come from a few factors. One of them is that we have 76,000 children in Montgomery County under the age of 6
Currently.
currently.
Okay.
That's driving it. That of that number, about 30,000 of those are economically challenged.
Right.
We also have seen the results of years and years of scientific research, particularly around the development of the early brain development, nutrition, importance of nutrition. We're beginning to reap the benefits of that, which has started back in the 80s and 90s, and of course these longitudinal studies take
Right.
time. And we've realized how critically important it is to address children at a very, very young age. 6 is too old. 6, 7, and 8. We need to start at birth.
You know, and I would say one thing I think is also added on to this, Nancy Navarro's background. Because before she was on the school board and then the county council, and she's president now, but her background was early childhood education and training caregivers to provide really good quality child care, which involves, you know, teaching your basics, your colors. But that's what she did. She provided that sort of structure for the caregivers.
She sure did, and she's been very much in the forefront of push as council president now.
Right.
In working with the county executive to push this most recent initiative forward. We're lucky to have her skill, and we're lucky to have the county executive's interest in moving this forward. The other thing we've learned about child care that's propelled it quite a bit is how important it is to employees and to employers. You know, it used to be that businesses thought of this as a social service and the responsibility of educators. Now they're increasingly coming to us and saying, you know, we can't recruit and keep employees because childcare we don't have enough, and it's pretty darn expensive.
Right.
So it really has taken on quite a new level of importance, both to families and to government here and to businesses. And I think the intention of the Navarro Elrich initiative is to begin to address that better than we have in recent years. We have a group in Montgomery County called Montgomery Moving Forward, which is a collection of business and nonprofit organizations that has been studying this issue for the last couple of years. And they've made a major report. Anyone's interested could go to montgomerymovingforward.org and they could learn about it. But they're the ones who really kicked this off, and our elected officials have picked up on it, and a lot going on now in this area.
What are we talking about in terms of funding? What specific? How will this look? This initiative.
Good question, Fred. Part of the problem that Montgomery Moving Forward and Mark Elridge has identified is that we don't know the answer to that. We're doing a lot. The schools, nonprofit organizations, private schools. We're doing a lot, but we really don't know the answer to how much is needed, where do we need it. So that's part of what County Executive Elrich's proposal is to better study, collect data, and better respond to what's needed. In addition to focusing more on two primary needs in the area of child care in particular. One is space, places for child
Absolutely.
care. It's very space
Yes.
is expensive, so finding space. And the other is, even if we had the space and even if we had all the money in the world to subsidize child care, we don't have enough people who could provide the care, child care providers. So that's all part of the initiative.
And that's kind of it's a problem because people are used to, I mean, there's child care centers where there's, you know, certifications and licenses and things like that. But then there's also a lot of people who provide child care in their home. And there is also a whole licensing procedure. And part of what I know Nancy Navarro has worked on is making it, I don't want to say easier because it's not like lessening the requirements, but making it a clearer path and less obstacles to getting licensed, because getting licensed for your own home child care means that you're meeting a standard. And,
Right.
and that's important. People want to know that. And it also is what's better for the child.
That's right, Jane. And again, another piece of this package is the creation of a government work group comprised of those agencies that participate in the regulation of childcare. I believe that childcare is one of the most regulated industries in the United States. And the planning board, park and planning has a role, the school system, the state, the county, the fire marshal, the health department, all of them have a role, and it is difficult for providers to
Well, and if it's
respond.
expensive, then it just causes people to go outside of one of these, systems that we know is safe and we know is giving the kids. I think it's interesting too that the change to all-day kindergarten and kindergarten being much more academic is also one of the drivers for needing good child care and good pre-K experiences, because it used to be, 25 years ago, if you came into kindergarten, you were learning then how to line up, how to get along with people, how to share. You're expected to come in knowing all of that stuff now, and the way you learn it is by being in some kind of group dynamic.
Well,
with other-
and that is part of what this new initiative on education that's going forward in the state. There's going to be a big pre-K component that will, which will really be funding that in the schools. But there is the whole part of, what about children that are in daycare? They can't go perhaps to half a day of kindergarten with all the complications. So I think it's getting the daycare that's out there to be much more focused and providing these elementary skills that children need.
And the quality of care, pre-K or child care, you're right. With good quality care, it's going well beyond colors and ABCs. And we know that one of the basis of real inequity in our community is that if you come from a family with resources, they tend to get child care that's pretty high quality. And those kids are ready to learn in school when they go to kindergarten. Those kids who are economically disadvantaged, they're the ones who enter school disadvantaged, academically disadvantaged, and therefore begin to contribute to the achievement gap. So part of the emphasis in early childhood is to really address the achievement gap at one of the best places to address it.
No question. No question. I just reflect on a lot of things, having been, and still am, an educator. But two specific things about my younger daughters who had the good fortune of, we were able to have my wife take leave for a while and be with them in their early stages. And then when they got a little older, we had good child care for them. But what was the key? The key was we could, quote, afford it. Right. And we made that as a priority. And families that don't have that accounts for the achievement, can account for the achievement gap.
And I think that some people may not realize also that having good child care not only impacts the kids, when they're age 6 or younger, or even in elementary school, but the lack of good child care is impacting kids in middle school and high school, because rather than being involved in sports or activities, or even in summer camps where they might get some kind of enrichment or education or whatever, they're going home because their parents need them to watch their kids. And so it's really, much more than just focusing on these little kids.
No
What
question.
sort of money, is there money attached to this initiative to give subsidies to people?
Good question, Linda. There's a significant amount of money. $7 million is some of the only new money in the budget. And some of that money is going to our what we call Working Parents Assistance Program, which is a subsidized child care program, which provides some subsidies to families who are of low and very moderate income. So that is increased, and also enables us to serve more people.
And in this very short time that remains, I have to say thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Great discussion.
Excellent discussion, and something I hope we discuss again. Thank you, all of you, for joining me this week. And thank you for joining all of us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Fred Evans. Please join us next week at the same time. Thank you. Thank you all.